truck parked by your school. Risk, nah, that's the golden rule. A lawsuit here, a bailout there, but hey, don't breathe the Utah air. Hype train, full speed ahead. Choo choo, baby, that's what they said. More reactors, more mistakes. When it derails, guess who pays? Factory built so nice and neat. Stack 'em up.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
A soda can could last for years, but where it vents, that's unclear. They called it clean. They called it cheap.
I love that so much. It's SMR, like Small Modular Reactors abbreviation. Hype train. And you'll find that at James Lucett's site here on YouTube. Well, we got a crazy tale for everybody tonight, unfortunately. The International Atomic Energy Agency has been censoring the International Atomic Energy Agency out of my videos. That's the most crazy statement conceivable. Or they're really, really bored. They got no opposition, I suppose. Might as well pick on Dana. Why not? Everybody else is doing it. All right, so we're going to start off with, before we get it, what we're going to show you is this releases radiation. I compared the videos, so there was 4 minutes lost off my second last video. So let me bring that up. And so that'll be the 736 Fukushima mystery pictures released in 2021. So that video was censored. All right. So I'm going to start off with another video from 2023 first, before we can get to where I've done the split videos. And when we get to the spot where they cut me off, I'm going to stop there, and then I'm going to play the missing piece. And so there's two sections. It's about 2 minutes per section. And just the whole setting it up so everything was quite a chore, right? It's not something I'm used to doing, but now that I'm used to doing it, we'll be doing it quite often. Whenever we see anything missing, we'll hunt it down, figure out what they chopped out. But let's go back to some other harassment from the industry. This was one of Calm Down Charlie's, where he's threatening me. He's been stalking me for a decade. It clearly sounds Japanese. He claims his name is Yoshida Mashita from Tokyo Bureau, Chicago Division, as we all know all too sadly well. I'm going to play this clip, and this clip is him calling me up, but he's announcing that Stinkfoot / Thunderfoot on Phil Marsden is a nuclear scientist, right? And they're gonna hire him to do something to me. And so that was the original introduction to that. It turned out it was called Operation Long Jump, but I decided, like, this is the first time I heard the word Operation Long Jump, and so I like taking advantage of that when it comes to Calm Down Charlie. The aperture is stuck open. I can't do pictures. I can only do videos. And if I accidentally click a picture, I have to take the lens off, restart the camera, click a picture, that'll leave it open, turn the camera off, then put the lens back on and only use video, right? So when you're zoomed way in over to that island, because that's one of our study groups for field studies, and it's good enough, like, ideally, the theory was I could shoot the video. I think that's Calm Down Charlie. Should we give it a try? Hello?
Hello, Mr. Dino.
Who's this?
Yoshida Mashada, Tokyo Bureau. How are you?
Is this the Tokyo Bureau Chicago Division?
Indeed, yes. Mr. Dana,
how do you like
we
my-
want to
how
tell
do you-
you about a new...
How do you like my T-shirt I got
We
for
want to
you?
tell...
Do you like my?
We want to tell
Do you
you
like my
about
T-shirt?
a friend of Tokyo Bureau.
Do you like
we
that?
tell you about friend of Tokyo Bureau.
You fuck Tokyo Bureau.
He
Fuck you
knows
too,
a
you
lot
piece
about
of shit.
radiation
You shut
and
your
nuclear.
pie hole.
He knows a lot more than you.
Who do?
You're stupid, man. He a friend of Tokyo Bureau, and he is instrumental in helping us launch Operation Long Jump.
How do you spell that?
Operation Long Jump.
How do you spell
Mr.
it?
Dana.
How do you spell it?
Oh.
How do you spell it?
Huh?
How do you spell that? Long jab.
Huh?
Long
What
jab?
you say?
You say long jab?
Long Jump.
Long jab.
No. Operation Long Jump. Get it right, Mr. Dana.
Long jab?
Long Jump.
Did you order
silly
one of my
man.
T-shirts I made for you? You probably got the
Dana,
pink. You probably got the pink
stop
one, right?
Stop avoiding the situation.
What do you want, scumbag?
With Tokyo Bureau advisor and friend,
Yeah.
Mr. Thunderfoot, you're gonna be finished. You're gonna be finished, Mr. Dana.
I'm all shook up, eh? I'm so scared of you.
You should be. Oh, I would love to be in your shoes. Oh, you make me sick.
Hey, what are you going to be when you grow up?
Okay, sit tight, Mr. Dana.
What are you going to be when you grows up?
Sit tight. We'll be with you soon.
I heard.
See you later, Mr. Dana.
What are you going to be when you grow up? I heard you're going to be a big prick just like me. Which means you haven't got far to go, actually, do you? So there's an interesting threat. They're going to come out and challenge me, are they? Well, it was much more sinister than that, turns out, unfortunately. And we'll get to that coming up later. That's the current sadistic demon. Raphael Grossi. It's disgusting what he's doing, isn't it? And of course, you know the other ones. It was Ralphie Grossi replaced him. All right, here we go. I dread these types of shows because it's just hard. The whole preamble to get everything ready. It's a lot of work. So this was a 2-hour, 26-minute video. And that screen capture of my website was 1 minute after we live streamed. It was a Thursday show? Or Sunday, I can't remember. Doesn't matter. Thursday show, that's right. So this one was 10 hours later. You can see it's still 2 hours, 26 minutes, 5 seconds. We'll say 4 minutes, right? They shaved 4 minutes off my video. And so at the 12-hour mark, what happens is my videos, comments will show up, for instance. There's a whole bunch of little things that go on my site you don't see on other sites. But, you can't download my video for 12 hours, and the video is always a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, so who knows what they're adding in or taking out. So this time I went down the road, because it's 736 pictures. It's a really important story, and you can find it up at my BitChute channel, because it's my backup channel. They won't let me have a backup channel on YouTube. I had bought I had a separate phone with a brand new chip number, activated it, put up a backup channel for YouTube. They took it down 6 hours later. A few days later, I bought another SIM card with a new number. Done the same thing. They took that site down and said I was breaking the rules of YouTube. But what they done here was they chopped out 6 minutes. So it went from 126.05 to 122.02. So 4 minutes and 3 seconds. All right. So we're going to play where That video over there is the original 2-hour 26-minute video. And this is the 222 video that showed up 12 hours later. So 12 hours later, my numbers will change. You can check it the night after the show. Count down to 12 hours. When you check my video, there will be a discrepancy. So I synced up the videos. I won't take you down that nightmare road, but I'm gonna duck out. I'm gonna let these two play. And when you see this video change, this picture's change, and compare to that one, which is right away, I'll stop the video and then we'll play that part. This releases radiation forever, right? The radiation never stops splitting atoms. And so the particulates that are being released are splitting atoms also. And reactor 4 is right alongside. It was the administration. Okay, so that's where it switched. And so you can see this picture. Think about this long, skinny building, and that skinny building up there with the blue roof building on a 10 degree or something. At your 2 o'clock or whatever, right? All right. All right, so we're going to play that part. And I got to kind of get out of the way because otherwise they're overlaying myself, you see right there. In fact, I'll move this one, Dana. The actual, this current Dana up here for a second. Or I guess it's not necessary. So this is the clip, one of the clips, the 2 clips that they chopped out. So I'm going to be a few seconds before and a few seconds after. So it's going to be a bit longer than the 2 minutes. 2 minutes and 20 seconds. It gives you more context, hopefully. All right, here we go. This is the piece that chopped out right alongside of it. So Reactor 4 in 2013, they had done that to it. That's before they allegedly got the fuel at the pools, which meant there was no pool, no fuel. Right, there's no water going to a fuel pool. The fuel pools are at the top of the buildings. There's only a stump lift. And as you can see, the bottom of the stump is not just deformed, but it's... So they put this contraption over it. And they done that. They built it off so it doesn't physically touch the building. They put these big panels on it with remote-controlled cranes. And the idea is to cover up the building, right? And we're not worried about it. We just want to make sure you understand, appreciate that these buildings actually don't exist anymore. And that this was a cover-up, right? And that's important for why the picture's redacted. That's part of the cover-up. And they have one of those chummies there where somebody can go up there and stand in them. I can assure you nobody's doing that. There's 8 reactor cores that melted down there. This was just strictly for photo shoots. All right, so here we go. These pictures, none of these pictures coming up were zoomed in on. And so there's quite a few. What happened with some of the pictures is they draw you a line. So notice how we're moving towards, what we're doing is we're moving towards the ocean from the easterly part of the site. And there's a few landmarks like a pond, a unique shaped little pond, parking lots on both sides. Now, you remember all that was completely rearranged over the next several years because you're quite a ways away from. So these types of pictures, you're zooming in now. Or you're heading down towards the reactors. Now I can zoom in, and I will on some of it, but there's not much benefit for these particular pictures for me to zoom in for you, because there's so much other stuff that we have to cover. So you're starting to see the center building up there. Was the administration building, and that took a pounding from the explosions of the reactors that are now at the top of your screen. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in and pull that down because otherwise we're going to have to zoom on every picture. Right, and so the second part of that video doesn't make any sense. Why? Because we showed those pictures over and over and over. But and so this was the first cut. Now, both of the cuts were made in the first 30 minutes of the original video, which is up at my BitChute, Dana Durnford, the Environmentalist, Dana Durnford's channel. Okay, so here's the second one, and when the screen to my right changes compared to the one to your left, I'm going to come into the video, and then we're going to play that section, which was about Raphael Grossi. No, not really, but more about the International Atomic Energy Agency. Here we go with that part. I'm going to adjust the volume for you. They are no longer alive. It'd be safe to assume. This is the back of Reactor 4. Those stacks, they look close, but they're actually not. They're so lethal, you'll die right away. If you go over there and stand up, dispersed for a minute, explosion, your organs will melt. And the same thing. All right. So, let me go back a little tiny bit on that. So you can see where the picture's changed, and that's the next 2-minute clip. And so when it gets to 2 minutes, you'll see this video, this picture, show up over there, and then the video will run past it. A little tiny bit. Well, here we go with that. It's 2:27 long. Right here. So we're going to play right here with this one. So I'm going to start just before, back there somewhere. Here we go. This is the back of Reactor 4. Those stacks, they look close, but they're actually not. They're so lethal, you'll die right away. If you go over there and stand up for a minute, your organs will melt. They're at 25 sieverts at the base of them. So whoever was doing this, they would have died that day. That's the most ruthless pictures they cut out. The industry has no soul. Whenever I see these pictures, I picture somebody at the International Atomic Energy Agency with a microphone talking to whoever's taking the picture, telling them to point to where they want that person to go from Vienna, right? In Vienna. The IAEA, as far as I know, didn't go there for at least 12 years, till 2023. And that was just to pick up a check for, what was it? I can't remember. $19 million? Because Japan is the third biggest donor to the International Atomic Energy Agency. So whoever stood there, they died that day for sure. Whoever took these pictures most likely died that day or that week. And there you got the 4 little monsters all in a row. A total of 36 reactor cores. And there was 1 in each reactor, except for Reactor 4. It was in the pool. And so that meant in the pools of each of them were 8 reactors. So there was 9 reactor cores in Unit 4, 9 in Reactor 3, 9 in Reactor 2, 9 reactors in number 1. They're all gone. And whoever took that picture, they're gone too. Like the reactor cores, they're gone. It's the most frightening pictures I've ever seen. When you spray a region, whenever you spray these regions to bind with the fuel particulates, that's a no man's land forever. It's just absurd that they had somebody do that. That was the International Atomic Energy Agency, no less. And the fuel pool of Reactor 1 was dispersed in an explosion. And the same thing clearly for Reactor 3 and Reactor 4. So that's what they cut out. That's quite a special little piece to cut out. I'm going to post those individual videos in my video section, because this is your live section, right? I'll post both of them. And the original video, you can go watch the whole thing. It's all in the first half an hour. The whole video is amazing. There's 736 pictures. And those pictures you're looking at, no one's ever covered them before. It's my 3rd time covering them, right? clearly getting a bit better each time you're going to cover them. You're learning, because it's very secretive how they hid away Fukushima. So the International Atomic Energy Agency didn't want me talking about I wasn't really speculating. I was stating a fact. They haven't been there for 12 years. That there was 8 reactor cores in each of the fuel pools. That's 36, counting the 4 reactor cores themselves. Just 36 reactor cores were gone. And each of them are 100 times the size of Chernobyl. But yet, even without those sections, my video is still a very powerful thing. Because it's still 2 hours and 20 minutes of bombshell after bombshell. Because it was a pun on, it was the end of the anniversary series. We had done 7 or 8 videos on the anniversary to try to help articulate. So it's worth your time. Now, I will post those sections that were chopped out. And just remember that the first few seconds are missing. I'll put a link below each of the videos. I'll post them individually because that one in particular, I think, the first one, the second half, I didn't think it mattered. I wasn't really talking about anything in the second half. The first half, I was giving you beautiful detail of Reactor 4 that you certainly won't see anywhere else. That's the heartbreak of this story. All right, here we go again. Now, there was another threat from Calm Down Charlie. I don't know what the date is on that one off the top of my head. Oh, there it is. February 6, 2024, where they threatened me again. And so basically what you're looking at is the government of Japan is threatening me. And they're so emboldened by getting away with it for so long. Then the International Atomic Energy Agency itself is actually chopping references of them out of my videos. I provided you with that documentation. Here's another piece, Calm Down Charlie. And we actually got a Calm Down Charlie song that drove him insane. James Creedy. He lost his mind. And maybe we'll play that after where I take a little break and clean up my lungs. Or part of it anyway. So let's play this one. This one again... We're doing a show, and this Charlie used to call in 10 times a show or something years ago, right? But he's kind of settled down a little bit. And I didn't block him for, used to drive people crazy too. I didn't block him for probably 6 years. We just hang up on him. I was just building up evidence that these people are stalking me, right? Harassing me. And if something happens to me, then there's a clear trail to go down. I mean, like, I've gotten gag orders, 6 gag orders at a time, so I couldn't talk about the nuclear industry's assets for 3.5 years, the people that they wanted to protect. Because I clearly had them tarred and fettered and on a fucking pole, running them out of Dodge. And so they came in and saved them by taking away my ability to even... I have to go see a provincial court judge to get permission and show the judge what I was going to say, right? Before I was allowed to talk about it. That's how they protect my free rights. Her cases. I convinced the judge to remove all the restrictions against me. They're her cases. Anyway, here we go. Dana, get your big head out of the way. You're spoiling the scene. The other one. This is Calm Down Charlie, 2013, February the 6th. You can go watch that video. So Raphael Grossi, who's a despicable, disgusting, parasitic human, who says that these reactors didn't blow up. That's Raphael Grossi. He went there, allegedly, and we covered that last year, and he made the claim nothing got out of the buildings. He certified the media's assertions, who the media used him as the arbiter of facts, that nothing got out of Fukushima. Illinois is calling in. Hello, Illinois.
Hello, Mr. Dana. Hello, how are you?
What do you want, scumbag?
Operation Long Jump in full swing, and we have big announcement.
Yeah?
New science advisor and friend of Tokyo Bureau, Thunderfoot,
Oh,
He
Stinkfoot.
know all about you. He know all about you, Mr. Dana.
You mean Stinkfoot? I know all about Stink. We know all about
Very smart
Stinkfoot.
man.
We know
You're
all.
a dummy.
I'm done, am I? Have you seen how done I am? I got 28 people on my show. Why are you worried about me?
I'm not worried about you. You should be worried about us.
Why are you threatening me?
This is no threat, Mr. Dana.
Well,
Your
that's what-
stupidity is coming to an end.
That's what you just. That's what you just done. You threatened me.
No, Mr. Dana.
What's your name?
Friendly warning.
What's your name?
Yoshida Machada.
You're
Tokyo Bureau.
Yeah.
Chicago Division.
How do you spell your name?
How you spell your name? Huh?
I put it on the screen every day, stupid. Because people want to know.
Why you ask stupid question? Anyway, I just come here quickly to
Stupid
announce
question for a
Science
stupid name.
Advisor Thunderfoot
Stunfoot.
is a friend of Tokyo Bureau.
Stunfoot. Stinkfoot.
You're in deep trouble. Deep trouble with the Dana, so I'll leave you to worry about
No, don't
all
go anywhere. I know if you leave here, you're going to go molest your puppies. I'd rather keep you here than molesting your puppies.
Bastard, you sick bastard scammer.
Okay, scumbag. Anything else?
Operation Long Jump is go. Welcome, Thunderfoot.
Welcome, Stinkfoot. I'll be welcome. I'll be waiting for him. We're looking forward to it. We're not worried about Stinkfoot around here. Now, you might hear me laugh, and you might think I enjoy this stuff. I don't. I just laugh at the ridiculousness of them thinking that they're going to drive me away. They don't realize who I am. They don't get it. I'm here to win, man. I'm not a quitter. I don't know how to quit. Just come on over and join the fucking winning team, because this is the winning team. And it's clear threat, right? There was 2 clear threats and evidence clearly. And even with that video, who was I talking about when Calm Down Charlie called in? Let's play that song, Calm Down Charlie. I gotta see. Not all of it. We'll play a chunk of it, though. I haven't heard that in a long time. That's a great... It's not that long of a song. And it drove him nuts. He lost his mind. He even came out with his own video, Mr. Dana. The song, Mr. Dana. Ooh. Smurfed that up pretty rough. Oh. Because you got to have my system on audio, or because the only things it'll show you when you're in audio is MP3s and that audio. Let me just adjust the volume here. James put out a couple of them. They're really good, but there's one of them. I'm going to adjust the volume for it. Give me a second. Okay, that's not the one. I'll be right. I had it in my pile, but I don't know why it went anywhere. It's because I guess, oh, that's right, we imported all of his music. We'll get it here in a second. Son of a gun, eh? It's not if I do my other hard drives, it's just this hard drive. I don't know. Don't worry about it. I don't want to. Let me try one more time, though. I can't seem to type in a search to my hard drive. It's been pretty rough, but... maybe this is it. Oh, shouldn't be there. Yeah.
Yeah, who this weak ass I think he is? Tokyo.
That's a great one, too. Oh, well. We're not going to worry about it right now. I'll find it here in a bit. It's terrifying how the Pacific ecosystem has collapsed since Fukushima. Plutonium and uranium suspected of spreading through the food chain. So we're going to finish show off with some headlines, because originally there was Dissenting Voices. And some of these headlines are what motivated us to go on the research expeditions. I got the gag orders when I came in from my research expedition, the big ones. Let me go backwards. So I'd completed 4 to 5 months at a time, year after year, for 6 years, research expeditions. And these were true expeditions, field studies, and we covered 27,000 islands. Well, we couldn't cover all the islands. It'd take you 71 years to do one a day, right? But we covered all the pinch points where the ocean had to flow through the west coast, because it's straight across to Japan from there. and when I talk about I do research expeditions, trust me, it's not a game. I spent most of my life on the ocean in my younger years, so I'm very versed in doing the stuff like this. And I'm very familiar with all the species because I was a commercial diver. And so the species to your left is very familiar. It's very difficult to walk up to the high tide line to put up a beach line. And so you put up a beach line to stop your boat from swinging so that you can use the islands, because there's 27,000 islands. You would pin yourself with an anchor and a beach line, and because it's all tropical rainforest, you tie it onto the trees, right? But you would wait for high tide, because otherwise you would walk on these species. And you don't want to do that. That's a dirty thing. You don't want to hurt the species. And so you would go up estuaries where you were in the freshwater, and then you'd come ashore and come back. Or you would wait for high tide, and then you would take the little Dorian or something, a little Zodiac, and put up your beach line. That was the standard practice, because you can really get hurt traversing those areas. So it used to be amazing diversity in 2011. Incredible. You could never put your Zodiac on the shorelines. The species to your left were exterminated. So this is why we have people like Calm Down Charlie and the corporations, TEPCO and the Japanese. I think he's connected to the Japanese government, is my take on that. I don't know for sure. We never did get a definitive answer. The species to your left now were exterminated. Like the plot of a summer horror flick all along the Canadian Pacific coast. And it wasn't just the Pacific, unfortunately. We know this is true now for the Atlantic. So the species to your left is what it should look like. Instead, it's devoid of any life whatsoever. Right? There is nothing there. These are not opinions. These are facts, because I went back for 6 years. And I provided GPSs of all the places where I took 260,000 pictures. Absurd amount of underwater footage. I have, and we used to take screen captures of the underwater footage and do that in shows, but also it's up at my website if you can find it. my website's a nightmare. I should really do something about that. Something happened to it. So this was the end of a very long day, and this was your typical weather, and then we were headed back. This is your typical tides coming up moment, right? In British Columbia, you can see all these islands kind of. This is a normal day for me on the research expeditions. It's rarely nice like this. There are certainly in the middle of summer, but even in the middle of summer, it's usually pretty miserable. I took an absurd amount of underwater footage and converted it into screen captured pictures. And we left now Fukushima really happened. Right? It really happened. You got reactor 3 and reactor 4. They really melted down. There really was around 9 reactor cores, massive reactor cores, each one at least 100 Chernobyls, because Chernobyl was graphite. which is a lot. It's a horrible accident. They closed 9,400 farms in Ireland, Scotland, United Kingdom. And so it's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing, right? And there's endless orphanages of abandoned children in Ukraine, disfigured from radiation. All right, so let's keep going here. So just for a little bit, we're going to cover headlines. And you can see why the industry stalks me constantly. But why is that acceptable? Yeah, I remember. Yeah, Zoe was there. I know. I sure miss her. I tell you that much. She was really something, that dog. 15 years old, eh? Still wouldn't give it up, that dog. She was special, man. She done a face plant on every beach in British Columbia. Her case. Radiation experts is terrifying how the Pacific ecosystem has collapsed since Fukushima. And what I showed you, now we went back for 5 more years after the first year. And the idea was to see if the species recovered or see if it got even worse. Because once you went there and seen everything was missing, the shock of that took 6 or 7 months I was like, someone hit me with a shovel. I was just stunned. Incredibly stunned by it. Yeah, James Lucid is calling in. Hi, James. Hey, buddy.
Oh, Mr. Dana.
Hang on. I haven't got your volume worked out. I got to turn the volume up. Oh.
Mr. Dana.
Here we go.
God.
Mr. Dana. You must have nightmares hearing that.
While all this was going on, I've been working on a track behind the scenes. There's this promotional video that got on my feed. They're taking this Japanese idol pop group out to Fukushima.
That's good, maybe. I don't know.
And it's all just like pure pop culture propaganda, Japanese weird.
So they lumped you in with the Japanese advertisement.
Right.
So hopefully people from Japan found your sites. Is this? I don't know if there's a good side or bad side
I
to
don't
it.
know if they found me, but I just found this propaganda piece from the recover. There's a Japanese recovery agency out there, which is probably who Calm Down Charlie's affiliated with. But they've got this government recovery program. So they hire these Japanese idols, pop idols, the J-pop.
Yeah.
and they get them out there, and it's like the Fukushima pancake girl or whatever from Thailand, the influencer. It was like, yeah, I recommend coming out here. The snow is great. The aquarium is fine. It's just the most bizarre thing in the world. But
we got a lot of headlines in the aquariums. They're not fine. Go ahead, James. I'm sorry, man.
But anyway, this video is completely in Japanese. There's no English subtitles, nothing. If you didn't know what you're looking at, like you
have to be Japanese to understand anything going on, right?
Or watch you all the time.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. Wow. Holy shit.
Well, I mean, you would see just the photos alone that you show.
Yeah.
It would remind, and so anyway, I just did a Control A. I just selected the entire transcript of this because they had the transcript available. It was all in Japanese.
And translated that.
So, I didn't have to translate it. I just gave it to AI. I'm like, listen,
Wicked.
we've got this. I'm watching this video. I'm seeing what looks like 1-ton bags in the background, kind of faded out. If you look there, I'm giving it screenshots, and it tells me, "Oh, you just found a gold mine for your next track."
Wow! Holy shit, eh?
Just like so, and the IAEA. You better be listening because you need to come after me.
Yeah.
I mean, you're wasting time with Dana. I mean, trust me. because the weaponization that's coming against music and culture.
Oh, music.
People are
Excellent.
They're going to start replicating what I'm doing and make it even better.
Oh, it's gonna come. It's gonna hurt. There's gonna be some pain coming their way because if the world starts to wake up, even a fraction, if you get 10% of the planet awake, how are they going to deal with that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean and they completely just bet the farm on public apathy. That's all they got. That's all they got. You know, and
they got
people understood. Like, wait a minute, you know, God, the world seems strange after Fukushima. Like, could there be a correlation?
It starts to make sense once they sit there and they're able to, if they're lucky enough to find someone like myself, right, and get the documentation over a few shows and stick it out. It's there's this little magic that happens where the bullshit doesn't work anymore, and they start seeing it showing up everywhere. The propaganda, like I see so much of it. I do shows covering it, right? It's absurd. It's just heartbreaking, unfortunately, right?
One thing that's really bothering me, and I had this vetted out. Like, I wasn't sure because I don't know if I ever brought this up. I don't know if it's ever really been talked about much. But there was this report that TEPCO created back in, I guess, allegedly 2008. Well, this is all, again, vetted out. Like, it's all sourced out. Like, I'm just telling you what AI is telling me. And this report about in 2008 sat on someone's desk until 4 days before Fukushima happened, and the report was about, what would happen if a tsunami or earthquake were to hit the site. It just, it could be coincidence.
I found that references to it in the emails that are redacted. Links are below to the NRC website. I don't know if we ever covered it or not. I don't think we did. But there was references about that existing. So go ahead, James. I'm sorry.
Well, I don't know what to think about that because, Kevin Blanche, he often says that saying about Hillary Clinton, I got to go talk to Henry Kissinger before I go to Fukushima. And it's like, that's odd.
Yeah, wow. Holy shit, I don't remember that one.
I'm just connecting dots. I don't know I don't know how to.
Sure.
I have no idea how to make out of it. But I did ask AI. I'm like, hey,
He's always...
I'm not thinking there was an underground nuke or nothing like that because there'll be evidence of that. There'd have to be.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you would have blasted the whole thing from the root up, from the bottom up, right?
But the problem is the scientists were all baffled by the earthquake. They're very surprised about the uplift of the quake. It was very massive. It doesn't.
It's 400 kilometers. It's 400 kilometers. I think of the tectonic plates drop.
So massive. It altered the axis of the planet, where
right.
Like a microsecond
That's right.
slower.
Like there is references out there that they can create significant tsunamis with nuclear weapons, and if you look at the biggest Russian bomb, which was 50 megatons. I mean, that thing was exceptional. It was equal to 3,800 Hiroshimas going off at the same time. Nagasaki's, rather, because it was a plutonium bomb, hydrogen plutonium. So there is reference of it out there. And yes, I mean, theoretically, that absolutely, you had a string of those bombs along a 400 kilometer, where the tectonic plates, right, are shifting. I can imagine it could invoke it. I'm not saying that's what happened. I don't know if it did or didn't. They got a 3,000-year legacy of massive earthquakes. They're 40 miles away from the tectonic plates, the world's stupidest place to build a nuclear reactor. And so a legitimate tsunami is, legitimate too. But would they set one off? If they had an agenda, would that be an option? Absolutely.
Well, would the agenda be? Because, again, later in 2011, Gaddafi was murdered. They took the IAEA took his uranium reserves. He had a bunch of yellow cake.
Oh, he was put up on YouTube with a 2x4 up his behind.
Right.
They tortured him alive on live stream, and then YouTube streamed it. They were just happy. Go ahead.
Because it's peculiar because let's just say you can engineer an event that would alter the uranium supply of the world. And one way of doing that would be a massive nuclear meltdown where nuclear energy temporarily holds this position where it's not wanted. It looks bad upon.
Well, it's dirt cheap so they can buy it and store it for 1,000 years. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Because everybody knows if you've got enriched uranium, it's not about peace. It's about getting plutonium as the byproduct.
I mean, we know how sick this industry is. This is a sick industry, right? So you wouldn't put anything beyond them.
Plutonium is worth the most money. Plutonium is what everyone's after. It's like this crazy insanity of how these power brokers feel safe if they have plutonium. You know, it's
the venture capitalists. Yeah. They'll eat any company. Go ahead. Yep.
But it's just the coincidences. 4 days before the report, Gaddafi later after Fukushima, divvied out.
Yeah.
And you wonder if this is all just self-preservation for the deep state to operate. If that's all this is. To
make sure they got a 5,000-year supply.
Yeah, that's all it is. Well, I just wanted to call in, Dave.
That's an interesting thought, James. It's certainly, I wouldn't rule it out. The industry pretty evil, man, what they got done.
Well, the IAEA needs to worry because
we got an extinction event, so
it's going to come out in the track eventually. So
it looks like the whole setup where they put the reactors right on a fault line, right? The tectonic plates themselves. Yeah. Where the 3,000-year legacy of tsunamis and earthquakes, massive earthquakes, because you're right on the tectonics. It was bound to happen. It didn't happen quick enough. They had an agenda. They wanted to start at some point. They said, okay, well, we'll just go ahead and do it ourselves. And how hard is it for them? Look how good they were with their weapons back in the 60s and 70s. They were astonishingly accurate. And so the technology has changed dramatically since then. Yeah, they can't get a man on the moon again, but they lost that technology. Right. But they didn't lose nuclear, I can tell you that much.
Right. No.
Okay, buddy.
Exactly. All right. I'll talk to you later, Dave.
Okay. Love you, buddy. Take care, man. Okay. God bless. Yeah. That's James Lucid. And it's good to have those types of conversations because you gotta think about would they do it? In a drop of a hat. Had they been doing it for 80 years, exterminating the species? Absolutely. Did they understand that putting all nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms, that was going to be a nightmare because you would poison a huge population just to that venue there. And that's simply what they went and done. It's pretty hard to find a nuclear power plant that's not surrounded by farms as far as you can see. And so there's a whole lot of these particular attributes where they were already planning a genocide. So would they pull the plug with nuclear weapons sitting around doing nothing? Because you can't use nuclear weapons. They'd stockpile a huge amount of plutonium. See, how can you rule it out, see? They call nuclear carbon free, but it's the most reason. It's the biggest construction project in history, period. Oh no, it's carbon free, Dana. Look at it. The radiation itself, why is every nuclear power plant, well, this is a satellite view of Sellafield, why is every nuclear power plant, particularly like the reprocessing disease factories, where they release so much into the local environment, why are they all surrounded by farms? And as soon as you start looking at all the other nuclear power plants, you start going, oh shit. Why was 14 prefectures in Fukushima banned for by 55 countries for a decade? Because it's poison. And they acknowledged that. Why would you remove the restrictions in most of those countries over 14 years? Radiation's not going to go away. This is the French government model of 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. This particular model, when it stops, is only based on 16 days of radioactive fallout. We're talking about 1 million to 10 million times pre-Fukushima background cesium-137, which is nasty to everything with replicating cells. And the pulse's energy, 600 feet every second, a single atom. And you put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle. That's some serious fucking energy in that little tiny atom. Because, or that little tiny particulate. 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, but you can't see that. And each one of them are pulsing energy almost at the speed of light. This is absurd. 200 million pulses of energy almost at the speed of light every second. So that's why you can use the splitting of the atom to boil water for 1 million homes and businesses at a reactor. And those reactor cores, though, they're very fragile. And if they start to swell up, they'll release all their material and you'll have a catastrophe. So they're only left in the reactor. The first lot is taken out after around 14 months. They'll replace about a third of it. So put about a third of new fuel that hasn't gone through a chain reaction yet. And that's kind of it's kind of a nasty thing to do because you've got emaciated whales. 10,350 gray whales showed up emaciated, and because they starved to death. And there was another 7,000 extra humpback whales. This is just a fraction of the whales that had the same attributes. All the whales got these same attributes, starved to death. This was on top of a unusual mortality events. And so you've seen the same attributes for all the other whales, unusual mortality events. Polar bears that normally eat berries and roots and everything else is the biggest part of their diet showing up emaciated. Because berries bioaccumulate radiation, by the way. You have them trying to blame, obviously through the International Atomic Energy Agency, was trying to blame explosion of sea lion deaths in Peru and deadly flu 2 years ago. It was 3,500 sea lions showed up dead, and they said it was the bird flu. Okay. But the pictures they showed us was emaciated sea lions. This is severe emaciation. And then the next picture they show you is an absurd emaciation. So they're trying to conflate emaciated sea animals on the coastlines. If you see that, oh, that's the bird flu. And of course, the population is so stupid, it probably works really well. But clearly radiation was an issue, right? You had, at one point, starvation caused mass death. That wasn't just shearwaters, though. Right? There's many other species. Seagulls, ducks, terns, cormorants. The list is actually quite long. You had 10 billion crab just go missing. This is just, let's get back to where we left off. 10 billion crabs, 4 times the population of the total harvest since the 1970s in Alaska. So that's the death of the industry. They just disappeared. What is the catalyst for all of this? All of it happened post-Fukushima, radioactive fallout. We had all these reactors melt down at the one time. Which is 36 reactor cores. Just bear with me, I gotta... I'm almost there. I don't know what's going on. My antivirus software. Anyway, it's terrifying how the Pacific ecosystem has collapsed. Now, the research expeditions I showed you earlier, the International Atomic Energy Agency and the nuclear associations, the lobbying groups hate me. The miners hate me. The uranium market hates my guts, despises me. The media that's pushing the uranium stocks, they despise me. I've suffered my share of hate for so long. It's not fair, right? I got advertisement. Maybe that's it there. Okay, anyway, eerie fog of silence around Fukushima plant. First surprising thing is there's no sound in the no-go zone. It's 2012. Now, there was 865,000 extra cancers in 2012. According to the cancer, they stopped releasing the numbers after the first year. Not everybody got health care, and not everybody was diagnosed, so it's not just the species. All right, here we go. On a surge in babies being born with extra arms, legs after Fukushima, field officials know the causes radiation. So the surge and the cancer surges and children being born with one testicle, males, was an absurd amount still going on. Children, there's 14,200 out of every 100,000 children need open heart surgery to correct congenital heart defects. 6 out of 10 children get diabetes. High number of stillbirths. South California, just because you're on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, the problem is this stuff is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison on the outside. If you ingest it, drink it, consume it, breathe it, then you're getting trillions of more exposure because it's in your body pulsing energy at the speed of light every second. All of them have that attribute. You see, some of them can't penetrate your skin. If it's in your body, it's enough to wreck millions and millions of cells and chromosomes and DNA every second with pulses of energy almost at the speed of light. So if you're into the species, at the minimum, it's going to screw up your sperm, for instance, of all the species. In other words, it also, like they do after every nuclear accident, one of the first studies will come out. There's 3 studies. There will be a sex ratio study, there'll be a study on autism, a study on Down syndrome. So the sex ratio study is meant to see if there's more males than females being born, which is a marker of mass poisoning with anthropogenic man-made radiation. And then they're also going to look for, because babies are being born, right? As you can count on babies, a lot of babies 9 months later showing up with significant debilitating illnesses and diseases like autism and Down syndrome, which they recognize amongst themselves as a keystone element of the species being affected by anthropogenic man-made radioactive fallout. California fishermen skunked haven't seen a squid. Now, the squid is the diet of many whales and many species, including on land, like eagles and that. California fishermen skunked haven't seen a squid, usually, or like a sea otter or sea lions and everything else, right? Haven't seen a squid, usually 10,000 pounds a day. Complete crashes at the oyster hatcheries, because oysters are microscopic filters, right? And so the shellfish will bioaccumulate radiation 125,000 times more than a fish would. And so if you want to get leukemia in a bowl, you go get a bowl of oysters from Fukushima's nightmare, and you can clearly end up with catastrophic health consequences. Complete crashes at the oyster hatcheries. Sardines, mackerels are missing. Pelicans sites are deserted. Yeah, it was like 20 out of 10,000 babies born at the rookeries. Ultra rare whale appears after decades, etc., etc. They're all gone. Shock as the sardines vanishes off of California. And the sardines, of course, they're a keystone species. They're expected. They feed absurd amounts of species out there, and they're a migratory species. So there's a lot of animals like dolphins and porpoises and whales and everything else will follow them on the migratory routes, and birds, of course, cormorants, and what we've seen in the post-Fukushima was right away in the first couple of years we've seen large die-offs of cormorants, of common murres. thick-billed murres. And then and they dive 600 feet all day, and they feed on anchovies and squid and sardines and krill and stuff like that. And krill is like a big shrimp that lives around to be 10 years, so it's really good for the migratory cycle of species. And then there was 1 point something million of them showed up, emaciated over, like you would find thousands of them on the beaches, after beach for 1,000 miles, not 1,000, I guess, but 700 miles or something of the coastline from British Columbia to Alaska. At the same time, they found 1.4 million 1.4 million Cassini auklets. And the Cassini auklets are microscopic feeders, which are eating zooplankton, phytoplankton, which is the basis of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestration chain. But a lot of whales are dependent upon that too, right? The biggest whales are dependent upon the smallest species for their diets. So you had two spectrums of the food chain showing up at the same time, emaciated, over vast distances of the migratory path. And and as I showed you earlier, that's what you're seeing with the whales. They would show up along their entire migratory path, but when they finally got to the migratory path, that's where you would find huge clumps of emaciated whales of all species, right? It wasn't just the humpbacks, which you're talking about over 10,000, and then you're talking about 10,350. They acknowledged that of the gray whales, we covered absurd amount of emaciated stories. We had one story with scientists trying to figure out why 70 emaciated gray whales, and you're like, holy shit, man. And all the other species, mass mortality event for sperm whales, you had over 1,000 culvert beak whales showed up in the United Kingdom coastline where they don't even belong, in different stages of decomposition, and the healthiest ones were emaciated, which is, typically is 10% of the species that you'll find. So that means at least 10,000 of them. Then the gray whales, the fin whales, the blue whales were seeing the same attributes. The killer whales weren't reproducing. All the babies that they did produce would die within a year. They're all gone, shock as the sardines, and they were blaming that on the food. The young aren't surviving. And this was a key element of Fukushima. All of this stuff is post-Fukushima. We never see any of these attributes pre-Fukushima. Experts suggest bald eagle deaths are related to Fukushima radiation. It's hard to have your national bird in your arm going through seasons. So experts suggest the bald eagle deaths are related to Fukushima radiation. Government investigator, acute hemorrhaging found in dead owls. You notice how none of these stories where they're screaming bird flu or any kind of avian influenzas. Mortality events began 8 months after Fukushima explosions. Poor conditions, badly emaciated when they arrived in the Pacific, badly emaciated. And to our horror, we went on research expeditions on the East Coast also. And one of the first things you noticed was the spiders was missing, because we've seen the same thing in British Columbia, right, for 6 years. But in the Atlantic coastline, the forests were silent. Now, the first couple of years you were hearing some birds in the forest, but last year and the year before you can barely hear one. Last year you didn't hear them at all. And there's no spiders in the forest. You're finding spiders on people's infrastructures, handmade, man-made houses, cars, stuff like this. And the webs are always deformed, and they're not really webs, right? And the webs that are on the houses, which is where you find the majority of the spiders, you're not finding anything in the forest whatsoever. On beaches you might find them, but not in the forest. And there used to be about almost 500,000 per acre. And so they're very important to the little birds, right? Because when they're trying to raise their fledglings. Acute hemorrhaging found in dead owls, and because spiders are really easy target, right? They're just sitting there. Acute hemorrhaging found in dead owls, drastic plunge in baby Californian pelicans, zero born in multiple study areas. So multiple study areas was zero survival. Well, not zero, but from 1,000 to 10 or less survivors. Don't know why it's occurring. Just 1% of the usual number of baby California pelicans. Because there was multiple areas where they had the same reports coming out, the babies weren't being born. And we've seen that for other species, right? We noticed that for kittiwakes down here 2 years ago. They had no eggs in their nest. And there was a gull colony on this island. There was a cormorant colony, which doesn't belong in the Atlantic at all. And they were the most prolific survivors because they can dive deep. And there was a kittiwake, which is like we call it a tickle-ass on the East Coast. Looks like a miniature seagull. They had no babies in their nest, and they're the extreme nesters. They're very agile birds, and they nest on cliffs that got weird angles, right? And so there's no way anything can come down from above. They had no babies at all. We know the puffins last year had laid double eggs, and the eggs didn't survive. We've never seen the puffins ever do that. That was up in Nova Scotia. Just 1% of the California number of baby Californian pelicans, nearly complete failure to breed. Only 20 born in a 10,000 expected area. Flabbergasted, says the experts. Never seen anything like it. And this was a common theme too, to hear those connotations. Mind-blowing die-off in the Pacific, far worse than anything ever seen before. Mind-blowing. Yeah, it was... and then 2022, we had a die-off of the common murres on the East Coast here that we went and investigated. And we were stalked by the Japanese. And there was well over 1 million common murres died in a 600-mile-long coastline. And they weren't supposed to be here. They're supposed to be going to the Arctic. They said they were driven in by ice, but there was no ice. I only covered, I think it was 150 miles of the coastline. We got caught in a snowstorm. Well, I did. But we managed to talk to all the little shops and the post office, because that's where all the gossip is in all these little small communities. And they were all telling you the same thing, that the cormorants were coming, or the common murres were showing up. They were clearly emaciated, and that was reported on in local medias. But at the same time was the dovekites were showing up severely emaciated, and they're microscopic eaters. So here you had the common murres and the Cassini auklets on the west coast, up around Alaska, northern British Columbia, showing up by the millions emaciated. And you also then on the east coast, you had the common murres and the dovekites, which are microscopic eaters. And the common murres will dive and feed on anchovies and squid and sardines and krill. But they're usually headed down the Atlantic to the Arctic. They shouldn't be on that coastline, right? And they were showing up in freshwater, and government agencies, like environmental agencies, Fisheries and Oceans, were showing up every morning when it got posted on anybody's Facebook page. They would show up and collect the dead birds, and they were doing it day after day after day. And then the following summer, because it was happening, we're seeing the same thing happening all along the coastline. With the gannets, they're very highly visible birds because they'll fly really high circling, and then they'll dive down, crash into the ocean. That's how they get their food, right? It's a spectacular sight. We're showing up emaciated everywhere, though, all the way up into the central of Canada. And they were trying to blame that on the bird flu, and they, for most of the population that worked, but we covered it extensively. Alarming over what's happening in the ocean. That's puzzling the government scientists. I've never seen such a thing anywhere. Again, you don't see any connotations of bird flu. At that time, we were seeing them trying to frame the narrative as domoic acid. Of course, that never panned out because we followed through on all the studies, and it always came back negative. And then we reported on that in our bird whale species die-off presentations that we hate to do, but we end up doing all too often. Because you're seeing it now symmetrically right around the entire planet, and the species are not reproducing. So what is the catalyst? I don't know, Dana, didn't you know, Dana, the saber-toothed tiger died of the bird flu, Dana? Yeah, no, I heard that somewhere. I think I wrote that one, actually. I never heard of such a thing anywhere. That's why the cavemen are gone, Dana. They died of the bird flu. Oh, yeah, climate change, Dana. The aliens caused all the climate change here back in the day. I never heard such a thing anywhere in the world. Reports full of bodies, countless carcasses happening in the ocean. We want to know if it's related to Fukushima. Nobody's asking about bird flus. Is bird flu legitimate because when your body is saturated, the species in particular, is saturated with anthropogenic man-made radiation, their immune system is compromised. Right, they're producing so many white blood cells, because what happens is for every atom, anthropogenic man-made atom in the animals' bodies or humans, their body's reflex is it's a foreign object, and so they attack it with white blood cells, because that's all they know how to do, right? Normally it repairs it, but in this case it can't repair it, so it'll attack it brutally for the rest of your life, and eventually, if you live long enough, it'll build a tumor on it. But at the same time, because it's anthropogenic man-made radiation, it's pulsing energy in every direction, every second, almost at the speed of light. And so your body has to try to repair all the chromosomes and DNA and cells that are being damaged. It can't keep up with that every second, and it can't. So as you bioaccumulate more and more into your body attacks every one of them with white blood cells. So the more white blood cells you're using, the less red blood cells you have. Red blood cells carries oxygen, nutrition, and red blood cells. So now because you produce so much white blood cells, your body, your immune system is completely compromised. So you're more susceptible to pathogens. You're more susceptible to viruses that were normally harmless and innocuous and benign. So in other words, yes, the flu, which was the birds have been living with for 1 million generations and survived it. It's worst of worst, I'm sure, over time, because there was so many years ago, right? You would expect if they're ever going to have an extinction event from a pathogen, it would manifest years ago when you would have, 200 million birds at a time. Now, when I was young, there was a 4 days a year where the migratory birds would pass and would blot out the sky, where you have 70 landing on your boat at any given time, common murres and other migratory species, egg downs. It was magic, eh? And if you're doing hook and line, the problem was you had to put weights on your gear because the birds would grab the bait on your hook, and then they would drown, right? And that would also float your gear off the ocean floor, so you wouldn't catch as many fish. And so we would put bricks on the back of the boat. So when I was 13, I was going out on the North Atlantic Ocean in a 33-foot boat, and I was the kid on the back of the boat. And my job was to reach into a barrel with 400 hooks. There's a hook every 6 feet, every fathom, and is on a little piece of string hanging off the main line. And so you would put, every day you had to put a piece of bait, squid or mackerel or herring, on the hook and put it down in a tub. And the tub was probably about 4 feet tall. So there's 400 hooks in a tub. Now, every day as a kid, I'd take 5 or 6 tubs of gear, we would, and put on the big boat, and my job was to throw it off the back of the boat. Now the boat is racing down these ground swells. Here I am at 13 years old with a cigarette in my mouth and throwing hooks off the back of the boat. And back in them days, you didn't have waterproof gloves, so your hands were cracked wide open. All the little veins on your hands, the little creases, they were all cracked wide open, and they'd bleed every day. And so you would soak your hand every morning at 3 a.m. in the kitchen table in salty, warm water, so you can start using your hands before you eat your breakfast. And then you loaded up your gear and got out on the ocean and steamed for a few hours to get to your spot before the sun come up. But my first job out there would be to throw the hooks off the back of the boat. So I'm very familiar with the bird migratory route, where you get millions and millions of birds constantly in the sky going past you on the migratory route, would blot out the sun. It was magic, right? It wasn't like it was on one side of it. You're in the middle of it with all the other boats. And we all had the same problem during that period, right? And just if birds got on, you pull the gear back up and take the bird off, because that time of the year it was basically pretty calm, right? That was summertime when the migratory routes were coming through. I didn't mean to digress, but I'm very familiar with this stuff because I've been at it since I was a child. And just because I worked a brutal life like that, it was a brutal life. I was still fairly educated because I only read really articulated books because my oldest brother, that's what he gathered up, and he would give me these books to read. It's pretty weird. Like, so Martin Bormann allegedly was the money man for the Nazis. And he had packed up 6 submarines full of all kinds of gold and diamonds and precious paintings and all kinds of stuff. And he headed out at the end of it with allegedly 6 submarines worth an absurd amount of money, probably several $1 trillion in today's. And so as a kid, here I was reading, and I read that book 5 times, and this was by a prosecutor who had pursued Martin Bormann. And all the books were about him, his pursuit, and most of it was about he paid $3 for a taxi, and $1.50 for a meal at the hotel, and he went and visited this spot and this spot and this spot. And he was a special prosecutor. He spent 29 years chasing Martin Bormann, and I read that book 5 times. That's how I ended up becoming a commercial diver. And in my spare time, I used to always go out in the communities I was into, and I would look for the oldest guy in the community. Who's the oldest guy you got here? Tell a good yarn, right? And you find out who he was, and you bring him a bottle of whiskey or something, and you get him to tell you about any of the old wrecks or any of the old sightings back in the day, and then you go out and dive those areas. That's what I used to do in my spare time. I was fanatical. I used to work 100 days at a time on the ocean, 6 hours a day on the ocean floor. So I know a few things about this stuff, okay? And I worked both oceans extensively. And I got taken out when I was 35 by a diving accident. And it took me 10 years to learn to walk. They're eating themselves from the inside. Cancers, liver, pancreas, intestine shut down. Infested with parasites, immune to the antibiotics. Unprecedented loss. And that's when I was out doing the research expeditions. I was in horror that there was nothing on the coastline. And I was under siege on shore, and I couldn't defend myself. And so I was just viciously assaulted the entire time I was on the ocean by a herd, an incredible herd of public relation firms. I'm sure a lot of them were doing it for free because they told me they were. And just to get points for the nuclear industry. And even today, they still harass me, attack me, threaten me, and all I'm doing is telling the true story of what happened. And no matter what they think and they try to project, it's never gonna stick to me because I'm not a bad person. Unprecedented mutations allowing cancer to spread from one species to another. Cancer to spread from one species to another. So you remember those pictures I showed you? That's basically what they're saying happened to those species. Is that cancer because I'd done this research expedition for 6 years, 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean. The world will never understand how crazy that was, how difficult that was, and what he's supposed to do. You know, the idea of these research expeditions was so that they could never say they didn't know. They could never say they didn't have the evidence, and they could never say that nobody tried to tell them. Right? That was the main focus, was that this information would be available for everybody with no extra charge. At my website, you can take it and make documentaries with it and monitorize it. You don't have to give my permission. If you need it, I'll be glad to give it to you. And you can tell a story too. Because I know you can't go out there and get all this information. It's a difficult story. I've been at this long before Fukushima happened, by the way, and I understood a long time before that. Before I even became active, I was well aware of an absurd amount of lies being told in this industry, but I still couldn't understand what my calling was, right? I knew it had something to do with this for sure. But I was a busy person all my life till I got hurt. And so when you're hurt, it's hard to, when it takes a long time to recover, you're not going to get out there walking around. You're going to be doing exercises every day. Your life is already just very fragile. So I see myself as, even today, I'm very fragile. It's pretty easy to push me over. I talk a good talk, but I got hurt really bad, right? So I'm not very strong. It took me a long time to learn to walk again. And I was out here with crutches in my hands doing research expeditions by myself day in, day out. So what would you rather have? Would you rather have birds and bees or nuclear? Would you rather have, like when you go and look at this, when you go out and look at the reality of this stuff, and I never left no stone unturned. I not only done the west coast of Vancouver Island, I done the west coast of Canada, right to Alaska. Because that's the pinch points where the ocean has to squeeze through, right, to get to the interior of the 27,000 islands. And so the most oxygen is going to be distributed. So when you see this connotation of bodies are swollen by cancerous tumors, all along the Pacific coast, mussels are dying, and that you like, it's very rare to see a mussel when every rock that didn't have something else would have mussels on it normally, and other species, right? So the cancer jumped from one species to another. Basically, that's what they're saying, and that's why I didn't find any species on the coastline. And I showed you what it should look like, and what it did look like after. And we went back all those extra years in desperation, hoping the species would start to recover. Of course, you know, the ocean is the soup of life. And so if the species don't recover, then we kill the soup of life. And that's not an opinion, okay? That's not a conjecture. That's a fact. Historical crises along the U.S. West Coast were facing a fishery disaster. It wasn't just fishery, it was insects too. Those tidal zones used to have 30,000 insects. Very never seen before things should be exclamation of alarm to the public. An extinction threat for the salmon runs. Loss of sardines, the squids, the sea urchins, the kelp, the massive sea star, the sun stars. It was so much more than that though. We broke the food chain. And then the trickle-down effect is not subtle. West Coast bird die-off is the biggest ever recorded. The stomach's completely empty. You don't see him mentioning bird flu or avian influenza 1, avian influenza 5.0 or whatever. No. They're very honest, right? Because there was dissenting voices. Originally, they didn't, like Canada banned interviews, Stephen Harper, with scientists and academics from the government. Banned it. You had to go through the government. Then they gave the scientists a list of questions and answers, and they were to send you the question and answer sheet, and you were supposed to read the answers rather, and they got a question sheet, question sheet. You got the answer sheet. And if not, then there's no interviews. And you could only be with recognized media, in other words, controlled opposition, right? Really something. The West Coast bird die-off is the biggest ever recorded. The stomachs are completely empty, staggering, alarming, unheard of. Never seen anything like it. Unprecedented in size, scope, durations. It was several million birds showed up emaciated over a long, of the migratory birds that they were expecting, and didn't reproduce. And we've seen that for many, like the common murres, the colonies up in Alaska. It was unbelievable. Historical crisis. It's the end of the species. An extinction threat for salmon. So when you see the sardines and the squid in particular, they are really, really important keystone species for all the other species. It's absurd. The food chain is completely like the phytoplankton, the zooplankton, all the way up till you get to a squid and you get to a sardine. or a herring or an anchovy or whatever. And these are the species that are going to be the most missed, because you have so many species, so many economies dependent upon those particular species, right? Stomachs are completely empty. And a host of other freakish phenomenon. North America will not be saved from Fukushima radiation if plants keep leaking. Animals are, the word leaking is very offensive to anybody that has a moral compass. Animals suddenly died on the West Coast right after 2011 disaster. The whole world noticed this strange phenomenon. Fatally high levels of radioactive material have entered the ocean. And serious pollution is ongoing. Yes, so there was dissenting voices originally, but they went away. And we desperately needed them people. Because I was doing a research expedition, say, when this headline here came out. Animals suddenly died on the West Coast right after 2011. The whole world noticed this strange phenomenon. Fatally high levels of radioactive material have entered the ocean. 100% death rate of baby seals on the California coastline. Many are starving. And so, from a shortage of food in the Pacific Ocean, this is absurd statements. Extremely thin / emaciated. And by proxy, then all sorts of illnesses and infections, right? Because your immune system is compromised. Milkless moms immediately abandoning the pups. Normally, if they're abandoned, they'll just go into the beach, and then there would be this incredible diversity of species, several thousand species there, 700 algae. There's all kinds of little species there. They would have found nutrients. They would have just ate rocks with mussels on it. They would have ate rocks, whatever. They would have just ate it, digested the food. They would have had enough strength then to excrete the rocks and the shells, for instance, right? That's the cycle of life normally. For ones that are abandoned, they don't end up emaciated in the first place. Alarm over very sick animals washing up in Alaska, bleeding from the face, bloody entrails coming out of their body. We're very much aware of the possibility of the Fukushima, radiation from Fukushima affecting the ocean life. 2016 story. Carcasses littering the beaches for miles on the Pacific coast of Alaska. They want, like the industry, the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi and the likes, is the United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency a curse on humanity's the species and water. And the reason water is because water is life. Water is your most important asset. No water, no species. Poison the water, no species. And the industry couldn't contain the emissions, for instance, from the fuel pools. So if you got 8 reactor cores in a fuel pool at Fukushima, or any other nuclear power plant, because you're decades old plant, right? That's where they store them. Then what happens is that fuel that's in the pool is still splitting atoms. You can't contain those atoms. There's about 120,000 liters in each and every pool each day. There's around 1,000 fuel pools worldwide. A typical reactor has 2 fuel pools dedicated to it and another common pool for extra fuel from all the other reactors. But each reactor has 2 fuel pools. One for a transfer, and then eventually one goes over into a storage pool for a decade to try to, what they call, cool down. But the reason it's dangerous for millions of years is because it's splitting atoms for millions of years. It produces heat by splitting atoms. So where does those atoms go when you take it out of the containment and put it in a fuel pool? Well, every nuclear power plant is surrounded by farms as far as you can see. So the best way to poison the entire biosphere is you have emissions that's going up into the ocean above you, emissions going directly into the fresh and salt water, particularly the fresh, and emissions, of course, the plume models of all the accidents, they cover the whole planet. There's no other element where a plume model covers the entire planet. Carcasses littering beaches for miles. Complete reproductive failure. This is emblematic of a nuclear accident. Horrific, horrid, mind-boggling, off-the-charts, unprecedented die-off has potential to be the biggest mortality event in the state's history, the most extreme that they saw. Complete reproductive fail. Massive die-off of sea creatures from California to Alaska. Animals are starving as the food chain continues to collapse. Mass starvation event plagued the West Coast. Felt like I was doing nothing but counting dead animals, says the scientist. TV, the deaths are troubling. Of course they are. You're talking about an extinction event. Massive die-offs reported in the Pacific Ocean. There's no fish out there anywhere. That's 2017. I was out there doing research expeditions in March of 2017. And because I was covering 900 miles of the coastline with 27,000 islands, you only get one kick at the can. You don't know if you're going to get back out in the following year, so you're going to stay out there for 4 to 5 months and do the whole coastline, document it with GPS, and so that the world can never say we didn't know, we had no way of knowing. It was free. No fish out there anywhere over a very large area. Where's their food? And so each of these stories were based up on 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mainstream media's stories. And under each of these stories were the links to each one of them. Many animals on the seafloor are looking sick or dead. Remember that headline there? Everything's dying. Dead, dead, dead. And dead. Experts investigating what's killing sea urchins and sea cucumbers in the Pacific Northwest. We're seeing things never previously observed. It's 2014. I was out on research expeditions during that. The worst wildlife die-off ever recorded anywhere on Earth. That's an incredible statement. None of these are talking about bird flus. None of these are talking about avian influenzas. Right? Hi, everybody. There are many, many more species that are getting sick, facing possibility of an extinction. And then the pictures I show you, that's an extinction event. The research I showed you is unassailable. It's incontestable. And the documentation is undeniable. And we're not just, so the International Atomic Energy Agency is trying to kill us. They're the architect beyond the laws. And that is not acceptable for them to do it. They don't have a right to exterminate our species and the 8 million other species. They don't have that right. These are scumbags, and you shouldn't think of them any other way as only as cowards, monstrous cowards, just because they wormed themselves into a position. So if you got $19 million, which is what they picked up there in just one check, recently they went down and picked up $14.6 million check. Raphael Grossi did. So it's pretty easy to pay YouTube or somebody else to censor me. It's pretty easy to have a permanent guide here from the nuclear industry that is so ruthless and so scrupulous and so inhumane that they would rather see the whole planet be exterminated than lose their job. Like they're going to edit out this video. They're going to edit out that video. Every one of my videos are edited. It shows up 12 hours later with a different time. There's a discrepancy. And when you get 4 minutes, I played the videos for you at the beginning of it. I'll post them up in my video section tomorrow. And I'll link it over to the original video. And we're not just talking, so please upload these videos, at least download them for yourselves for later. It's a real big deal. There are many more species that are getting sick, facing possibility of an extinction. Some sort of toxin out there. Yeah, nuclear's a toxin. Photographer X-ray-like image shows how radioactivity spread throughout the bodies of the Fukushima wildlife. So they can actually see the radiation in the species. Another one, Tokyo professor. I couldn't help but feeling pity for the trees. X-ray-like images shows spread of radioactivity equivalent of miscarriages, stillbirth, congenital malformations. Cesium remains dispersed throughout the water column from the surface to the ocean floor. So plutonium remains dispersed throughout the water column from the surface to the ocean floor. Americium remains dispersed throughout the water column from the surface to the ocean floor. Curium which is the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod, remains dispersed throughout the water column, and so does 1,000 other species. And so they destroy the system from within and from exterior. The radioactive fallout itself, in order to get dispersed throughout the water column, has to go through the phytoplankton. So you have to destroy the phytoplankton, the zooplankton, and by proxy everything up the food chain after. Because it never stops falling out. The amount released was just, it's unprecedented. It's unimagined, really, for us. But why did they build the reactors right on the coastline, right? Why did they build the reactors on a fault line, on the tectonic plates, with a 3,000-year legacy? They knew it was going to happen eventually, and then, if they can, why would stop them from... Now, they'd done it on purpose, right? They knew that all these reactors with the fuel pools at the top of the buildings, this wasn't a design flaw. This was the design. You don't think they weren't expecting another tsunami, another massive earthquake 40 miles away from the tectonic plates? And if they had an agenda, their agendas are usually at 100 years. So if they had nuclear weapons at 50 megatons, and I had a bunch of them, that could certainly trigger the tectonic plates to let go. Could they use supercomputers to engine out where to put these nuclear weapons? Like, each one of these 50 megaton bombs is equal to 3,800 Nagasaki plutonium bombs going off. So if you had 10 of them along the tectonic plates, could you get it to drop? Would there be anybody there to tell the story? No. Could you get it to drop? That's a great question, see? Absolutely. Because you put your nuclear plants right on a spot where you knew this was going to happen at some point, where you knew it would happen within 100 years on top of that, and you didn't put them there till 50 years later. Like, every 100 years that happens, you have a massive earthquake in that zone. You know why they don't build reactors in Kobe? Because, like, the same thing with the Komodo Peninsula, where you got a 3,500 year fault line that's dormant, lit up in January 1st, 2024. That created a tsunami for around 100 miles. And we're lifted up. 6 different communities lost their harbors because the harbors came up 13 feet. But the whole coastline for over 70 miles came up 13 feet. And that could be for like a half a mile of the coastline lifted up 13 feet for 70-something miles. So there's a precedence there, is what I'm saying, right, for this stuff to happen. They knew Fukushima was a sitting duck. And it wasn't just Fukushima. No. They had Doiny 10 kilometers away. And so it's hard to comprehend that nothing happened at Doiny, when the evidence clearly say quite a lot happened at Doiny. But there was other nuclear plants along that coastline. They knew at some point you were going to lose 40 or 50 reactor cores in a one go. And there would be nothing you can do about it. The tsunami swept away 1,200 kilometers of the coastline, up to 10 kilometers inland in some places. It left a debris later that year, there was debris out in the Pacific Ocean the size of Texas, 2,000 square miles, of material that was washed out with the tsunami from 1,200 kilometers of the coastline of Japan. And then the maps show you where people died and where people were missing. That covers most of their coastline. And the evidence is overwhelming for all of this. So when you got cesium remaining dispersed throughout the water column, you got every other anthropogenic man-made isotope in that elixir of death. Fukushima radiation is still circling the globes on top of this. But this is not just symmetrical for the Pacific Ocean. This is true for all oceans. Like, the radioactive fallout covered the planet in 20 to 30 days in every single study. And we're talking about Canada. The numbers in Canada and the United States are just absurd. 220 million atoms of this, 20 million atoms of that per liters. 450,000 atoms of Xenon-133 in Washington, for instance. Well, it wasn't just a single plume goes to Washington. It wasn't 220 million atoms of iodine-131 that just only came to Ottawa, Canada, where the studies to. It was continent-wide, right? If you got one isotope, you're going to have all the others. And then it's going to be the same. Is going to be true for Fukushima radiation still circling the globe. Well, how does that? You can't rain all that out in just a decade or two. New contamination map, but you're going to rain out a lot because it's still melting down. It's still releasing huge amounts of radiation. There was an incredible amount of reactor cores were just ejected right out of the buildings. And if you go back if you don't know much about this story, then you go back to the anniversary presentations I've done for this year, for 2025, or any other year, and you gobble up, download that information, start screen captures. You can tell the story right away. It's not hard. I gave you everything you could ever hope for. And then some, right? And I'm still at it all these years later because it's that important. I'd much rather have species than a single nuclear academic on this planet. It's better 10,000 nuclear scientists die than one homeless person. New contamination map shows cesium-137 deposited over 900 kilometers from Fukushima and extends west of Hiroshima. A new model shows the west coast covered in Fukushima fallout a week after 3/11. A week later, well, the French's model is 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air on day 16, covers most of the planet. So yeah, North America, west coast was covered in a week. And it doesn't need a jet stream to travel. Is the issue with this stuff. It's so tiny, see? But yes, it had no problem getting to the jet streams. Public is anything but safe because the prevailing winds do blow right across the Pacific. That's another facet of building the reactors where they did. Landfall was 5,000 miles away, and it was a tropical rainforest. And it devastated everything. And the health of all species, not just humans. The public is anything but safe outside of the evacuation zone during a Fukushima-class disaster. Radiation doses of 50,000 microsieverts in 7 days for people living 100 miles away is possible. It was lethal doses in the 10 to 20 mile range. That's why they evacuated everybody. There's over 3,000 people died in the first few weeks. And they blamed it on stress. It doesn't work that way. They've evacuated millions at a time post-Fukushima for supercell typhoons, supercell cyclones, supercell hurricanes. And we never seen those particular attributes, only at the nuclear meltdown. Controversy after the U.S. government estimates show 40,000 microsievert thyroid doses. 40,000. Think of each microsievert, and we're going to lowball it, at 750 man-made atoms. So 750 times 40,000 in their thyroid. So what it basically means, though, is you'd have so much of just, because they're only acknowledging iodine, for instance, right? Any gammas like cesium will also go into the thyroid. But the thyroid is going to be, for all species, is going to be producing radioactive hormones. And certainly for the rest of their lives. And then, because these things are electrically charged, they stick, right, to wherever they end up to, they'll stay there, no problem, because they're electrically charged. And they're pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second. So there's all these radioactive hormones. And of course, for all the species, it just destroys their ability to reproduce. At the same time, they're producing radioactive stem cells. And this is what we see in post-Fukushima. And then the illnesses and diseases, not immune deficiencies and injuries and illnesses, are going to be based off of that. And that's what we've seen happen. 131 in Austria, Czech Republic, Hungary, other countries. An indicator of a nuclear chain reaction, you say. 10 days after criticality talks at Fukushima. I really, iodine's nasty, don't get me wrong. But the biggest byproduct of radiative fuel rods is the curium isotopes, and it needs a lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium, though. And what that means is that those singles should drown out the iodine-131. So they're, instead of saying plutonium or curium or uranium or americium or neptunium, they're saying iodine or cesium, right? And don't get me wrong, iodine, cesium, horrifying stuff. Like I said, they closed down 9,400 farms in Ireland, Scotland, and the United Kingdom because it's not like a banana. It's not like walking in the sunshine. It's not like climbing them out and flying on an airplane, sleeping next to somebody. Elevated radiation also up in Germany and Sweden and Slovakia. I can show you studies from all of these countries if you want. And I do many, many times, right? UK expert claims iodine very unlikely. And my next show is going to be a really good show, by the way. I'm going to do a news cycle. It's some crazy news lately coming out. UK expert claims iodine very unlikely from Fukushima since it's so many months ago. Yeah, well, an expert would tell you that for trying to cover it up. Like, you got to be pretty clever to frame the narrative that way. Because it's very subtle, right? Because they already bombarded the population of the planet. Oh, it only got an 8-day half-life. So the average person is going to look at it and say, it's gone in 8 days. What are you worried about? Come on, have a drink. The reality of it is, it means there's an ongoing criticality, an ongoing nuclear meltdown producing. And they knew that. There was no way there can't be at a nuclear meltdown, see? They successfully covered up quite a few meltdowns over the years. And they done the same here. They successfully covered this one up. The average population, the 99% plus of the population, has no concept of any of this. It's frightening. And then you just got these little squeaks out in public like myself. There's a handful of us. There's about 5 of us total worldwide that are honest, right? I happen to be probably the most prolific because it makes me sleep better. International Atomic Energy Agency official, we are a little concerned. They should have been mortified. Now Poland and Denmark report radioactive dust. So let me go backwards. You had America with 40,000 microsieverts. That's not a controversial dose. That's a get the frig out of Dodge dose. The data wasn't released. Didn't want people to panic. All of Western U.S., most of Eastern Canada covered radioactive flooding. So you had Austria, Czech Republic, Hungary. You had Germany, Sweden, Slovakia. You had Poland, Denmark. Austria, Czech Republic. Had a Fukushima health study. This guy was nuts, eh? If you smile, radiation can't hurt you, guy. He was in charge of the health care of people in Fukushima. It's like having a vampire in charge of the blood bank, right? Had a Fukushima health study. 100 millisieverts, 100,000 microsieverts a year is okay for pregnant moms. Oh yeah, well, pregnant women were offered free houses if they moved back to the nuclear wasteland. Effects of radiation do not come to people that are happy. They come to people that are weak-spirited. Because it takes a while to manifest or get diagnosed. Not always the case. There's like streets in Fukushima City, one street in particular where 7 people dropped dead in a single year. 7 people dropped dead on a shopping street in a nuclear wasteland. Gee, wonder what it could be. This guy, we got horror stories in this guy. Scientists, the slower you spread radiation, the more effectively it produces cancers and an inherent defect. And so they always blast cancer down your throat, right? There's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems. There's respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. There's Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes. Fukushima hospital worker says 5 out of 7 babies were born with birth defects. Down syndrome or lost by miscarriages. 5 out of 7 babies. That sounds about right. Doctor threatened for revealing data how bad Fukushima-related illnesses really are. Scumbagson. Gunnarsson, man, what a sellout, eh? What he done to us. Like he pretended reactor 4 and reactor 3 didn't lose the fuel pools and didn't melt down all the way. They're, like I showed you a picture earlier, they're gone. They're not actually gone. They're not figuratively gone. Rather, they're gonzo. It's just mad that anybody can live in denial. And dangerous. It's so dangerous to pretend that this never happened, right? Oh, the International Atomic Energy is the best at it. They're the most gruesome you can imagine. International Atomic Energy is the best at pretending that Fukushima didn't melt down. 23 days of radioactive fallout right here. Look, this is 10 million times previous background radioactive fallout of cesium-137. That's reactor 3. It ejected the reactor core and the fuel pool right out of the buildings. So the International Atomic Energy Agency is well aware of what that means. That was reactor 3. This is reactor 4, what's left of it. Like, they ejected right out of the buildings. And the fuel pools, reactor cores are at the top of the buildings. So there's a lot out there to get you, including these creatures. They're all going to pretend that they're in the fuel pool of the building to your left that doesn't exist.
Where I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest x-ray.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this.
They're so crazy, they're growing food right alongside 1-ton bags. Do you really think they're not shipping it to your countries? Do you really think that you can avoid this? Do you really think this won't affect you catastrophically and your children and your parents, your grandparents, and your loved ones, your communities? Your favorite, their favorite thing to do is kill us, apparently. Japan blog author claims medical workers had malformed babies are still declared as stillbirths or miscarriages and are not included in the statistics. Fukushima risk underestimated. 5% of the young girls will get cancer in a 20 millisievert for 5 years. It's absurd to suggest it's. You got to use the word millisieverts. A single atom, anthropogenic man-made atom, that is in your body, no matter who you are, what species you are. Your body attacks it with white blood cells for the rest of your life. Well, except for insects because they don't have white blood cells. But your body, I'll always say insects, but your body doesn't know what this is because it's not created by the sun. These elements are not from the solar system. So your body treats it as a foreign object and attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells. So it's not 20 millisieverts, and it's not just cancer. It's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems. Once you get it in your thyroid and it's in your bones, you're producing radioactive hormones, radioactive stem cells. That's not what your body's designed to do. And so there's no way that's going to turn out good. That's the worst case scenario, and this is the world we're now living in. They have poisoned all of our air, all of our beautiful, wonderful water, our most precious, our absolutely adorable water. 70% of the children tested are contaminated with radioactive cesium, all of them from outside the Fukushima prefecture. Tokyo newborns had a safe, study claims, 1.1 millisievert, 1,140 microsievert thyroid doses, and they only counted food and water. They don't include inhaled radioactivity. They do not include the 10 days when iodine and other short-lived isotopes peaked. Well, it wasn't just the first 10 days. And for every iodine-131 that they're talking about, there's 10 times more iodine-132, 30 times more iodine-133, 31 times more iodine 129. 129 got a 15 million year half-life, so it'll saturate the thyroid glands at a phenomenal rate, where it's pulsing energy almost at each one is pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second. And when you're talking about it, it's not hard for a person to drink a liter of water a day. So you're imagine at these numbers. Well, let's do some numbers. I got a number there for you to make you giggle or make you cry. So a hot tub is typically a meter, which is 1,000 liters. So we had 220 million atoms per liter. $220 million atoms per liter and 1,000 liters in your hot tubs. So people were in their hot tubs with 220 million atoms, anthropogenic, man-made iodine-129, not counting all the other isotopes would have been in that liter. 220 million atoms in their hot tub, their children and grandchildren. friends and families and loved ones sitting in that, cooking with radiation, absorbing it into your body constantly. So what do you think's happened to the fish and the marine species? Japan physicians demand answers. 90% of the urine samples contaminated with cesium in a city 200 kilometers. 90%. So why would you eat food from this shithole anyway? Worse than radioactive rain, after Fukushima fallout was suspended near Earth's surface without settling down. Potentially a health risk, especially for children as they breathe closer to the ground. And so who else is closer to the ground? Birds and insects, mammals, animals. Eat the biosphere, the biota. That's why you got forest fires out of control, and you're having flash floods because you killed the biota in your forest with full body X-rays. Among everything else, gamma shines, neutron bombardment, beta rays, alpha shine. Government declares disaster over diseases and dying fish on the U.S. West Coast. Sudden, unexpected, large decreases in population. Science are mystified. The International Atomic Energy Agency was mystified. The International Atomic Energy Agency was stumped. The International Atomic Energy Agency. Environmental disaster. Like, how can we ignore all of this and then not hold this industry accountable? We can't change what happened, but we can hold the industry accountable. I say bring back burning them at the stakes and wood chipper stuff. Massive die-off of sea creatures. For what they done, they knew what was going to happen. They perpetrated a crime up on us. And it's a crime. They knew it was a crime. They hid it away from you. You can get them. You can arrest all of these scumbags. In any country, every country has a version of racketeering statutes, right? Where they conspire. The International Energy Agency is not above law. Or actually, I think it is, isn't it? You can't hold them accountable. The worst you can do is liquidate their assets and use the money for reparation and remediation or something. Mass starvation events plagued the West Coast. Feels like I was doing nothing but counting dead animals. And I hear you, man. I was out there looking for dead animals because that's all you're going to find. It was really strange because all the pictures of the beaches got no colors on them. And it was one of the most colorful beaches on the planet. Pre-nuclear industry, certainly pre-Fukushima. You imagine what this planet looked like pre-nuclear industry. If the nuclear industry never come along, it'd be unbelievable. Your world would be it'd be unbelievable species. It'd be just magic every day. Terror at Fukushima nuclear plant fears about highly fragile cooling systems. So here they are pretending there is no meltdown at the plant, and they're getting money thrown at them that they're going to steal because the reactors are long gone, and they're running terror drills at Fukushima. Fukushima is a terrorist, right? The International Atomic Energy Agency is a terrorist. International Atomic Energy Agency is a terrorist and have now destroyed the future of humanity and the 8 million species. That's their legacy. And I'm sure they'll censor that out of the conversation. I'm recording it personally. We'll be checking. United States hit with extremely large peaks of Fukushima radioactive material. Significant amount of plutonium released for months. A significant amount of plutonium. Gee, I wonder what that means. So we got a significant amount of plutonium released for months. All day, every day, plutonium is just hemorrhaging out. Let me see here. I get lucky. I did. Excellent. I really got to relabel that folder. So for plutonium, which is important because we're talking about it, a significant amount of plutonium blanket the entire northern hemisphere. It was measured globally, and blanketed the entire northern hemisphere. That's important for these studies. So with the dog studies, 144 beagle dogs, death from the radiation occurred about 1.5 to 5.4 years after their exposures in the laboratories. They're given a single monodispersal inhalation. Bone tumors found in 93 dogs were the most common cause of death. Tumors of the lungs, the skeleton, and the liver occurred beginning about 3 years after exposures. Liver tumors were found in 20 dogs with the cause of death in only 2 dogs, and occurred later than the tumors in the bones and the lungs. So if the dog lived long enough, he would get 3 different tumors: the lung, the bone, which is the typical skeleton, and the liver. And these were competing causes of death for the animals, these tumors. And the findings in the dogs, this was Loveless Respiratory Research Institute in New Mexico, which is the Navy, the United States Navy laboratory. So the finding in the dogs suggests that they're very conservative when it comes to spilling the beans. A similar dose-related biological effects could be expected in humans accidentally exposed. But that's simply not true. Because it turns out it was discovered that human kidneys are 50 times less efficient than an animal kidney at removing the plutonium. So we're 50 times more, not 50%, but 50 times more likely to die of the same attributes as the beagle dogs and puppies died. And Japan studies the kidney accumulates most radioactive cesium by far, the highest levels of any tissue inside a cow. And where did I have my cancer? In the kidney, right? But the biggest byproduct of the irradiated fuel rod was the curium isotopes. And curium isotopes are the major byproduct in irradiated nuclear fuel. Now forget about the fact that it's the biggest fraction of alpha. Ignore that part for a second. Think about the fact that it's the major byproduct. So not iodine-131, which you see in the studies here in Canada from an Ottawa study at 220 million atoms per liter of water. Curium would have been in the same water at a much higher ratio. And curium happens to need lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium, though. We're getting there. 1, 2, 3, 4. 20 more to get through. 21 or something. Professor links to die-off on the U.S. west coast of Fukushima radiation. Nobody has any idea what to do about the continuing contamination. A river flowing under the plant with molten fuel in the bottom and it's going into the ocean. All right. A river flowing under the plant, but there's also a big reservoir underneath that plant. There's a big reservoir underneath that plant. And this is an important facet of the story. Let me just go find that. It's right here somewhere. Blah, 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 blah. Should be right there. I can't be gone too far. It's got to be right there somewhere. Oh, there it is. Let me come back down here and get set up. So, come back down to that headline. Here we go. No, next one. I missed it. There's a river running under the plant. Where the hell was that to? This one? I got no idea what I got done there. I screwed up anyway. So there was 1,000 tanks at that site, right? We only counted 750 in any of the pictures we could find. But officially there's 1,000 tanks at the site. So in 2013, the BBC Rupert Winfield Hayes came out with this report. It's only a minute 2 minutes long. I'll be with you. I'll be right back at the end of this. He's going to tell you all the tanks were filled, and that Japan themselves, TEPCO, is going to tell you they have no control over the water in 2013. It's important.
Fukushima plant sits smack in the middle of an underground aquifer. Deep beneath the ground, the site is rapidly being overwhelmed by water. Beneath the surface, water flows downhill and into the basement of the damaged reactor buildings. There it is contaminated with high levels of radiation. To stop the groundwater flowing on into the nearby ocean, engineers are building an underground barrier. But that is causing the groundwater level to rapidly rise. It's now so high the water will soon reach the surface. Then it will start flowing overground into the sea. This week, the company that owns Fukushima, TEPCO, made this disturbing admission.
We understand that this water discharge is beyond our control, and we do not think the current situation is good.
Outside experts say it's now clear TEPCO is incapable of handling the cleanup at Fukushima. It's time for the Japanese government to step in. The situation is already beyond what TEPCO can handle, he says. If it were possible to take proper measures, they would have done it already. It's not as if TEPCO is refusing to do what they can. They're doing everything they can, but there are no perfect solutions. Even if the government does step in, it's not clear what it can do. The only other solution is to pump out the contaminated groundwater and put it in storage tanks. But after just 2 years, the site is already jammed with more than 1,000 giant tanks. Most of them are already full up. At least 400 tons of new water pours into the site every day, and it's going to continue for years and years. Fukushima's water crisis has only just begun. Rupert Wingfield-Hayes, BBC News in Tokyo.
Rupert Wingfield-Hayes, BBC in Tokyo. New fuel leak have been discovered at Fukushima. We're almost through this stuff for you that are counting. Experts believe melted fuel is leaking levels at over 5,000 sieverts. So 5,000 sieverts, and I'm not sure which reactor they were talking about. I think it was reactor 1. 5,000 sieverts. Three is a lethal dose for a human. If you spend 15 minutes there, it'll melt your organs and you'll die sometime that day. If there's 10 sieverts there, you'll die somewhere in the next few hours. Your organs will melt, literally melt, liquefy. At 5,000 sieverts is like a sniper round if you run past it. We've seen numbers at over 1 million sieverts outside the building of reactor 1 and 2. Just 1% of the usual numbers of baby California pelicans, nearly complete failure to breed. 20 out of 10,000 new babies probably didn't survive, right? There was nothing to feed them. 100% death rates for baby whales, killer whales. No newborns survived the past 3 years. Is absolutely the worst possible thing. Pregnant orga dies with a decomposing stillborn full-term fetus inside. But there will be an extinction for sure. Interview in Fukushima, a lot of police are dead, but it is not reported. When the radiation workers died, they are marked as missing. There was over 300 police officers in one story that died of kidney failure and stuff like this, heart attacks. And they were the people that were on the main road stopping you and anybody else from going into the abandoned communities. High level of radioactive material concentration in Tokyo. So 2.7 microsieverts was considered at a high concentration. This is the Wall Street Journal, by the way. Hotspots detected in Tokyo, Yokohama, the Wall Street Journal. So they were acknowledging that 2.7 microsieverts per hour was considered a hotspot. Now they're only looking for gamma, by the way. That's all they can detect apparently. Pasture grass contaminated with cesium above safety standards, 200 kilometers from Fukushima. exceeding acceptable safety limits of radiation in many locations. No, as you start looking at the real numbers, you realize, they knew this was going to happen at some point. Strontium-90 found 245 kilometers from the meltdowns in Yokohama City, 150 times background. But this was only 2011, so after about 1,000 days, strontium-90 is produced at a 100-to-1 ratio of cesium-137. And so the cesium-137 numbers are just nightmarish. Cesium contamination stretched Japan's west coast. So this is stuff they acknowledge. Nagano, 250 kilometers from the meltdown on the east side. I actually got a whole folder on Nagano. It's a brutal nuclear wasteland. Canadian radiation test shows iodine-131 in rainwater at 100 times above U.S. drinking water standards here in Canada. And Canada is a scumbag country where I'm from. It was 7,000 atoms a liter considered acceptable because they couldn't contain the radioactive fallout from the CANDU reactors, right? Here in Canada, the world's stupidest design, most idiotic design is the CANDU reactors, the most gutless reactor on the planet. The Point Leper, New Brunswick plant is broken down all the time, right? Thank goodness it's down again. But it's legally, because you can't contain it, allowed to release 14,600,000 trillion atoms of tritium-3H legally a year. That in a context of an accident, that would be considered a catastrophic event. But the CANDU reactors, they can't contain the tritium. In particular, because it's such a small isotope, right? It just comes right out of the pipes. Well, the pipes to pipes, any condensation, how it works is really, you got condensation on the pipes because you got a very high temperatures, these reactors, very high pressure, right? 1,000 pounds per square inch, 650 degrees. And so the pipes, when they meet cold air, they get a lot of water vapor onto it from the external supplies, right? That's actually irradiated because the water going through the pipes are so radioactive. It irradiates it and tritiates it. So it's a perpetual disease factory because you can't contain that stuff. It's on the exterior walls. And so then that's released into the environment through evaporation and distributed far and wide, and it's catastrophic to the health of everybody. All nuclear plants have radioactive tritium rainfall within a few hundred miles at them. And because that particular attribute and the fact that they have fuel pools splitting atoms released directly into the environment all the time, they need to try to keep the numbers down. The only way to do it was to surround the sites as far as you can see with farms. And that way the radioactive fallout locally gets shifted out regularly. That's their plans, eh? Yeah, we're going to poison everybody that eats the food. But at least our radiation numbers stay low. That's what they done. They were sat there in the International Atomic Energy Agency doing, probably laughing about it, said the same words I just said, probably. That was probably their exact words back in the day, right? They're literally your enemy in every sense of the word. They're the enemy of everything on this planet. They're the enemy of water on top of that, which everybody on the planet should fight with every fiber in your body to preserve water. There's integrity. Like to destroy it and poison it with radioactive fallout, because you can't see it or smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it or touch it or pick it up or throw rocks at it or perceive it. And without clean, healthy, structured water, you have nothing. No species has a future. And so they purposely contaminated all the water on the planet. You know, they dumped it in the ocean nonstop for the first 30 years. Hotspots are spreading. Government to check radiation up to 460 kilometers from the meltdown. Man selling highly radioactive cattle feed blames the government. Highly radioactive cattle feed. I never thought it was contaminated because the city is 150 kilometers. Miyagi, which is a nuclear wasteland. They knew Miyagi was a nuclear wasteland, for goodness sakes. Man arrested for collecting rubble, radioactive rubble, 60 kilometers from the nuclear meltdown. Because it's nuclear waste. Radioactive substances rose 5 kilometers in the year on March the 14th and 15th. That was reactor 3. carried by the jet streams of the United States and Europe immediately. And the way it disperses out, I showed you the models and maps earlier, so at least the French one, rather. Like, it's the only element that symmetrically covers the entire planet as a particulate when released into the environment. Everything else, like carbon emissions, doesn't travel very far. That's why you got a lot of plants and trees in the first 100 miles of a nuclear plant, right? Because coal plants and gas plants and oil plants. Farms are always surrounding nuclear plants. So this is radioactive fallout from the French government on 23 days. All the models will show you the exact same thing in about 30 days. And that's what the explosion they were talking about on the 14th and the 15th. When I got 4, 5, 6 more to go, I might as well hang around and catch the rest of them. Problem with killer whales local to the west coast. The only baby born in 2013 died, and just 2 born in 2012. A depleted fish supply was blamed. Right after that, they started blaming it on the salmon. Oh, they only eat sockeye salmon from the Columbian River. You don't eat anything from the Columbian River because Hanford is up that friggin' spot. Hanford dumped, during the Manhattan Project, 450 billion gallons of radioactive sludge, the splitting atoms, into the soil and the Columbian River. Right, they had a open ticket. They can pollute away. Your heart's content, boy. The stupid idiots knew this would be the long-term outcome. Didn't benefit. It's better to be slaves than be on a destroyed planet. To an industry, I'm talking about. Just 2 born in 2012, depleted fish supply. And so the Columbia River, 450 billion gallons. If you take an aquarium 6 feet wide and make it 518 feet tall, 518 feet tall, and wrapped it right around the planet more than once, that's how much they dumped of radioactive sludge. That's how much they dumped, because you got a 585-mile nuclear waste site there, and they're right on the Columbia River. And so it's the equivalent of 1.4 million, 1,400,000 of the 300,000 gallon tanks from the tank farm. They got their, with 170 tanks, right? And how much money did they spend on that nightmare, right? 90% of it goes to administration. In other words, it gets stolen. But this industry, China done the same thing. Russia done the same thing multiple times. Soviet Union had done the same thing. This industry has done everything it can to kill us, and we're still alive, and it's time to start fighting back. Experts warn marine mammals and seabirds are starving. Going to suffer for years to come. Boats returned without a single fish. 2014. January the 5th, I was still trying to get out. I was stuck up by Alaska at that point. Hard to resist the idea that humpback whales are trying to tell us something. Alarming crash, sardines, likely radiating. So you had sardines, the anchovies, the squids, all the keystone species showing up emaciated or dead or missing. Seabirds are starving. Boats return without a single fish. Record levels of 6 and injured seals and sea lions. The perfect storm. Pups should be weighing 2 to 3 times as much, severely emaciated / malnourished. Notice that none of these stories mention the bird flu. Rapid, stunning, and complete die-off of animals near a nuclear site. 150,000 antelope bleeding from the internal organs. Oh, lesions on their organs, do they? Never heard of that one before. Nuclear. 50 atoms a kilogram in your diet will give you permanent lesions to your organs. Well, you'll have the same issues. Pits brimming with corpses. Experts are baffled. Never heard of. It's unheard of. 100% mortality. I know of no example in history like it. Doesn't make any sense. Well, really? But it's close to a nuclear site. You don't suppose? What happens to people, their organs melt when they get too close to high levels of radiation? What happened there, I wonder? Most catastrophic fishery collapse in history expected along the U.S. West Coast. It's a nightmare. I've never in my life dreamed that it could get this bad. Threat of a coast-wise fishing failure of every species. 2017. Yeah, because that year, I think, was the year when we were like, yeah, we're in trouble. That was the year they arrested me. No, that was a couple of years. I came ashore that time. Yeah, we give you a bunch of gag orders. Have a nice couple of years, Mr. Durnford. So they took, and I'll upload those videos tomorrow, this one in particular. This is the section, they took it in my video. I'm going to play it one more time. This particular one is only a 2-minute video. And then we'll come in and we'll get a song, and we'll call it a night. We'll close down the poll. It'll be a great time. Stay around, get some popcorn. It'll take us a bit. They are no longer alive. It'd be safe to assume. This is the back of Reactor 4. Those stacks, they look close. Oh, that's not the piece. We're going to play this piece. So this is where, because that part shows you how I found it, right? So this is the part. This is the back of Reactor 4. Those stacks, they look close, but they're actually not. They're so lethal, you'll die right away. If you go over there and stand up for a minute, your organs will melt. Now remember, this is the second part that was edited out of my third last video of 736 pictures. They entered this part, edited it out of my video as I showed you at the beginning. There are 25 sieverts at the base of them. So whoever was doing this, they would have died that day. That's the most ruthless pictures imaginable. The industry has no soul. Whenever I see these pictures, I picture somebody at the International Atomic Energy Agency with a microphone talking to whoever's taking the picture, telling them to point to where they want that person to go from Vienna, right? In Vienna. The IAEA, as far as I know, didn't go there for at least 12 years, till 2023. And that was just to pick up a check for, what was it? I can't remember. $19 million? Because Japan is the third biggest donor to the International Atomic Energy Agency. So whoever stood there, they died that day for sure. Whoever took these pictures most likely died that day or that week. And there you got the 4 little monsters all in a row. A total of 36 reactor cores. And there was one in each reactor, except for reactor 4. It was in the pool. And so that meant in the pools of each of them were 8 reactors. So there was 9 reactor cores in unit 4. 9 in reactor 3, 9 in reactor 2, 9 reactors in number 1. They're all gone. And whoever took that picture, they're gone too. Like the reactor cores, they're gone. It's the most frightening pictures I've ever seen. When you spray a region, whenever you spray these regions to bind with the fuel particulates, that's a no man's land forever. It's just absurd that they had somebody do that. That was the International Atomic Energy Agency, no less. And the fuel pool of reactor 1 was dispersed in an explosion. And same thing clearly for reactor 3 and reactor 4. And so, put myself back in there. That is what they chopped out of my my video for the anniversary of 736 pictures that were released in 2021. Is this scumbag of the Earth, United Nations, International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, agency, a curse on humanity, the species, and the water? I think the evidence tonight is strongly suggesting that that's who we should be pointing our fingers at. All right, so James had put out a really sweet song, Vented at Midnight. And then I'm going to play that video, but after that I'm going to play Calm Down Charlie. Because I got it ready to go here. So I'll see you in a moment. I'm going to adjust the volume for you. I'm getting better at that. Because I want to be able to open the video, make sure it's in 1080. It's really good feel to this song on top of that. It's telling a story. Vented at Midnight. I'll turn the volume up. I'll be right back.
Paducah nights ran quiet, but the stacks moved heat. The workers clocked in clean, but they left incomplete. They said just low-grade waste, kept the phrase polite, but the vents were loaded and they fired at night. Keep your head down, trust the air. What you don't know was never there. Vented at midnight across containment lines. No shift log recorded, no baseline signs. They said just process, but the meters were off. And Paducah remembers what the clearance forgot. Union tags and Geiger clicks, stories erased. Plutonium tracked, but the claims were replaced. No samples shown, just a nod and a grin. And Merrick kept teaching through the isotopic spin. Keep it moving, no alerts. The fallout's here, but not in the search. They said you weren't exposed enough to file, but 80% of houses knew otherwise. They said trust the numbers, but who set the bar? Who vented the midnight rocket? Who etched the first star? Vented at midnight across federal ground, with no one informed and no checks around. If you call that routine, then baby pause. Ask Paducah who paid the cost. Vented at midnight, and no one filed the claim. Just motion, just time. Keep it moving, keep it tame. Just motion, just time. Keep it moving, keep it tame.
Okay, so I'm going to play also a song that drove, because I played 2 videos of Calm Down Charlie, one of the industry's little pet monkeys. James had put together Calm Down Charlie. Well,
They called him Calm Down Charlie.
oh, that's not the one either I wanted. I can't find it. I should just play that one because I like it, but that is a little disappointing. I had different versions of it, right? Who knows? I gotta try it out. I want to hear it I don't know about you guys. Oh, some of you do. This is a great song, right? We already got 3 of them. I thought I had it for sure that time. It doesn't want to look for it. Never seen that before. One more time. I got, as far as I know, I got 2 of them right there. Oh. Just give me a few problems. One of these will be it. Sorry.
In the Tokyo Bureau, swirling smoke and neon beams. Chicago division, fueled by heated dreams. Calm down, Charlie calls in, voice smooth as silk. Says, Dana, you're dreaming, don't cry over spilt milk. On Dana Durnford show, the chatter's turning wild, but Charlie shoots it down with that cool cat style. Unit 3's no killer, no harm to see life. He chuckles in the static, cuts through the strife. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show. With a snap and a grin, Charlie's voice so clear scatters the dread, dispels all the fear. Mux didn't hurt, he croons with a sigh. Science is for thinkers, not a whim or lie. Though Dana and the crowd may shout and roar, Charlie's unfazed, he's heard it all before. His swinging rationale, like a soothing song, says, hold on to logic, we gotta stay strong. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show.
That's all, folks. Have a great day.